Hello everyone, today we're going to build a foundation monorepo. We're going to use Next.js for the front end. We're going to use tRPC with Express.js for the backend. Also, we are going to have multiple libraries for managing the database, forms, UI, network, and so on. So yeah, let's get started. I don't know why that was there. Let's start from scratch. I'm going to create a directory called foundation tRPC. You'll open that with VS Code. Okay, let's create a new project. I'm going to remove the main and create a private true property because this is the root of the monorepo and that's not publishable, that's not executable. So we don't need a main file. Okay, let's create a new file called pnpm-workspace.yaml. Here I'm going to specify the packages. So whatever that is inside the apps and libs directory are going to be the packages in this monorepo. Let's create those directories. And inside the apps, I'm going to, okay, so before that I also have to create a .gitignore that has all the build directories, node modules, and .env. Okay, now we can initialize a Git repository in the root, and I'm going to continue creating our applications first. So inside the apps, I'm going to run this pnpm create next app, which is for creating a next application. I'm going to name this web. I'm going to enable TypeScript, ESLint, tailwind, src, app router, and no import alias required. I mean custom. That is running, and for the API, I'm going to create a new directory called API. Go inside it, initialize a project there, and I'm going to create the install the required dependencies. First, we need Express. We need .env for accessing the environment variables. We need cors for enabling the cross-origin requests origins. Those are the dependencies, and we need to add the dev dependencies called for the types, cors and express. And also I'm going to use a package called tsx. This is like ts node dev. Okay, so I just found about this package. This is for running the ts files. Okay, that's what we are going to use to run this backend in the dev mode. So we have our required dependencies ready. I'm going to create the scripts. Okay, we use tsx for the development server. I'm using this watch so that any changes will be picked up and the server will rerun. And it targets to a file called index.ts inside the src. Let's create that. And for building, we will remove the dist directory and we will just run the tsc. The tsc is for type checking. We are running the tsc. So actually I forgot to add the TypeScript as a dev dependency. Okay, so for type checking, I'm using tsc with no emit flag so that no JavaScript compiled JavaScript will be generated, just type checking will be done. And for starting the actual production server, I'm using the node. I'm pointing to the dist, the index. This is the compiled JavaScript file that is inside the dist directory. I also have to, okay, let's the root, we have to add the TypeScript as a dev dependency. I have to actually enable the workspace root flag, and I'm going to have a basic ts config file there. The target is going to be next module is common.js because we have both the front-end and backend environments in the monorepo. I'm enabling the strict true, and commonly I am excluding the .node module. So this is the common basic base ts config file. that we will be extending from inside the applications and libraries. Now I'm going to create a tsconfig inside the API. So I'm specifying the out directory, root directory. I'm enabling the ES module on interrupt, skip library check, and JSX. Let's start simple, and we will add this additional compiler options as we face those errors. Okay. For this testing, I'm just logging some message here, and let's build it. Okay, so we have our dist, we have our index, and this is a JavaScript. Okay, right now it doesn't make any big difference, but soon we will be setting up our Express and we'll have our API running. We will do it now. I'm importing the cars and Express. I'm creating. Okay, right away we got some error. Okay, so it says that default. In order to do that, I have to enable ES module interrupt. Okay, I'm creating the app, and so this is for parsing the body request, body content. I'm also enabling the cross origin from all origins. You can configure this to only allow requests from specific origins. I'm creating a root route. It's a get request and it sends back hello world. And I'm listening the whole the backend application in 8080, and I'm also logging the port number here. Okay, let's run it. Okay, localhost 8080, and I'm saying the hello world. Okay, and if I change this, you will see the oops, that's a JavaScript code. I'm sorry. If I'm changing this, you'll see the server rerunning, and if I refresh, I'm seeing the changes here. Okay, and also let's build it and see the compiled files. That's the JavaScript. Okay, so our API is almost, I mean, we have set up the API. Let's execute our front end. The front end is running in localhost 3000. Okay, let's clean up the page. I'm going to delete all the contents Next.js came up with, and I'm just returning hello. And also I'm going to delete all the stylings Next.js came with, other than these directives. We have our front end and back end ready. Okay, so next step, I'm going to continue working on our validate script. Okay, so we are going to have format checking, linting, type checking as 3 pillars of our validation. We have set up, we already have the TSC. Let's also have the same command in the web for the types checking. Okay, so it has linting on the backend. Right now does not have ESLint, but you can have just install ESLint as a dev dependency. You can have some opinionated ESLint rules or plugins, but I'm going to skip that part. Okay, there is no lint checking in the backend. Okay, so before continuing there, I'm going to set up a Next. So I'm going to use the nx latest and initializing it. The pnpmdlx is an alternative, is a equivalent of npx. I need dev build to be run in order because we are going to have libs. So we want the libs to be built before building the application, right? There is going to be a dependency. Cacheable build tsc lint. Build script is going to generate .next for the next application list for the API, and also I'm going to add build. tsc does not create any input. It's just this is no emit. Lint does not create any outputs. Yes, I want distributed caching. Okay, so nx is done. We can now build, use run mini, target build. So this will build both our front end and back end. Okay, the back end is done in 2 seconds. It's a simple application. The front end, I mean the next application is still running. It took like 11 seconds. But since we added build as a cacheable operation, it takes the outputs from the cache because the files did not change. If I change the file, I added something there. If I run the build, it's going to run the API again, okay, because it detected a change. The web build was taken from the existing cache, but the API build was built again. Okay, that's what Nx is pretty useful for. It's a build system, but it's very useful for caching, and it's also remote cached. So when we build something here, when somebody is building with the same file system, Nx knows nothing changed and it takes output from the cache, remote cache, which we enabled, right? Let's set up Prettier. I'm going to install Prettier as a dev dependency along with that -w. And in the root package.json, I'm going to, we don't need this test script. We need 3 scripts. One is the format. I'm using the Prettier executable, right? The Prettier will be seen inside the bin. This is what we are calling here. And I'm specifying what files to target. So every TS, JS, JS, and JSON inside the apps and libs. And I'm also ignoring the .git ignore. And I'm extending this format to add 2 different flags for check, for write. Now I can do this. Format check will return all the files that are not formatted accordingly. And also I have to create a Prettier RC file. So I have 3 properties here. Single quote true, trailing command all, semi false. I don't want semicolons. If I run it again, so these are the files there that require formatting. Okay, for example, this file was lacking this trailing comma. Now that is fixed as well. So instead of doing one by one, I'm going to do format write. So that automatically goes into files and fixes the formatting issues for us. So these 3 files got some fixing. Now if I'm running the format check again, we get all matched files use Prettier code style. Cool. So we have one ready. One of the 3 pillars of validation. I'm going to use the run mini to have a build script as well, so that we can build all the files, all the apps and libs from the root. Since we did the format right, it changed the file system, and hence NX is running it once again. Okay, so similarly, I'm going to add two commands, one targeting all the TSC and one targeting all the linting. Okay, I told you that the backend I am not setting up ESLint, but you can do it. Okay, so we have the TSC ready, format right ready, linting ready. Now let's create our validate script. First, I'm running the format right. That is not opinionated. Okay, we don't need a manual intervention to fix a formatting issue. Then I'm going to run the TSC. I'm going to run the lint. And finally, I'm also going to run the build. So if the project is not building locally, then it's not going to build the, in most cases. So I've seen cases where if after even passing the type checking and linting, sometimes it won't build for some reason. So I decided to have the PNP build as a part of validate script. Now we can do this. It's going to run the format right. It fixes automatically the format. It runs the TSC, it runs the linting, and the build was taken from cache, so it ran quickly. If I do it again, the format right will happen again, and all other scripts like lint and TSC were taken from the cache. It's a huge time saver. So we have our validate script ready. Next, I'm going to set up Husky. So I'm using this Husky init, and I'm also installing all the dependencies that it comes with. So basically the Husky init will create a .husky directory in the root with the pre-commit hook, and it also modifies the package.json, the root package.json. So I'm continuing it with the pnpm install. Okay, before that, actually we need to do a commit. The pre-commit hook basically uses the npm test, but we don't have a we did not do any commits actually. Okay, so I'm going to modify this to pnpm validate. We are almost done here with setting up our monorepo and this validate script, but I'm going to inject an issue, a type error here. And I'm going to commit. So this is an alias I have that actually adds all files to the stage, and it also commits initial commit. It runs the validate script, and the TSC should fail. Okay, so it fails. If I do it again, okay, the commit is successful. Okay, and I'm going to go a step further. I'm also going to use lint staged because it's a monorepo. It can have dozens of even hundreds of application libraries, and I don't want to run the validate script for the whole thing, or the whole monorepo. I only want to run the type checking, linting, and format checking for the staged files. So that's why this lint staged is required. So I've added the lint stage as a dev dependency, and I'm creating a file called lint staged.config.js. Okay, so I'm targeting let's add JS and JSON. So I'm targeting all these files from the staged ones. Okay, and I'm running the validate script. And the validate script is going to have tsc linting format, right, and build. Now we can do this. You can actually run lint stage directly from the asset command because we have the dependency installed. We also have the lint staged config file there. Something is wrong. I think it's lint hyphen staged. Okay. So we have the file ready. We have the dependency installed. Now we can do this. No stage file found. Let's do some staged. I stage everything. Now we can do the pnpm lint staged. It identified 4 files, and the file format, the tc, tsx, and js.json have 3 files here. It ignored the pnpm lock. Okay, we did not specify. We don't have anything to do with that while validating. Now if I have the type error, lint stage is going to fail. Remember, this process we are not involving Husky. Husky is for creating the git hook. Wow. Okay. So basically, that was because the error was not staged. Okay, so that needs to be remembered. The error, the code with the problem has to be in the staged changes in order for lint staged to pick up that error. Okay, that's the whole point. All right, so it failed, and it also shows where the error is. Awesome, right? Fine. I'm going to commit the code. Remember, in the pre-commit, I modified. Okay, so I have to modify this lint hyphen staged. Now if I commit the code, so this is going to add everything to the staged file, and we'll commit the code. Okay, add lint staged. After this, I will also show you, we will also test once the whole Husky and lint staged setup to fail, right, when we have a type issue or anything. That commit is successful. Now if I try to commit this will fail. Okay, that's it. So we have our Monorepo setup. We have our applications running. We don't have any libs yet. So that we will be working on the next section. We will be creating a DB library. We'll be using Prisma ORM. We'll set up a Docker Compose file that will run a Postgres locally for this project. And we will generate a Prisma client inside the DB library, and we will export the Prisma client back to other libraries and applications. So that's the next section. After that, we will be setting up the tRPC form library. Yep. So see you in the next section. Hey everyone, in this section I'm going to create a DB library. Let's go inside the DB library. I'm going to initialize a new project there. Also, I forgot to actually rename the applications and the applications. So I'm going to add at foundation tRPC before the names. Let's also do it before the DB. Okay. fine. We need to install the Prisma as a dev dependency. Okay, so before that, let's create a dear Docker Compose file. Okay, so we're going to have two services. One is for running the Postgres that also has a volume for having the persistent data even after even when we stop the container, we want to persist the data. And also I'm having pgadmin. So we need Docker desktop to be installed and running. I already have something. I'm going to delete that. Okay. Foundation tRPC. So I already have a volume called DB data foundation tRPC. So I don't want to delete that volume. Okay, so I'm going to rename to tRPC. I mean foundation tRPC 2. So we can name whatever we want. This is just local database. I'm going to compose up. Since I have this Docker the VS Code extension installed, you can also do Docker compose up. Okay, you can also do that. Now the services are running. Oh, I'm sorry because I missed a step. So this Docker compose file is using a lot of environment variables. Okay, let's create them. So I have the Postgres user DB password information, PG admin email and password, also PG port and the PG admin port. Those are all the required environment variables. And also make sure you have the port number same here, or also the information. This database URL will be actually, so when we initialize Prisma, that will actually create a database URL inside the .env, but I'm going to leave it there and see if it replaces it with the dummy database URL. So again, I'm going to compose up, Docker compose up. Our services are running. I think this time we don't have any errors because last time I missed the .env file and Docker could not understand what these values were. Now it's fine. I have set up Prisma already. I mean, installed the Prisma as a dev dependency. Now we can. So these are the commands we can run. Mostly we'll be using the Docker migrate dev. This will be taken care of by the VS Code extensions, validating and formatting the Prisma schema, which will be generated for us in a bit. And Prisma Studio is a simple DB explorer, which will help us to do simple CRUD operations in our database. I'm going to initialize Prisma, so that will create this Prisma directory with the schema.prisma file. Right now it's empty. With only one client called Prisma client, we can actually add more in one generator. We can actually have more generators. There is a generator for drawing the ERD diagram. There are a lot of community created generators for Prisma, which helps the development process, but I want to keep it lean, simple. And okay, so while initializing, one more thing Prisma does is it comes to the env. If you don't have an env file, it will generate a file for us and it will place a placeholder database URL. But since we already have one, it did not do anything. So I'm going to continue working on our so I'm going to create a few tables and I will explain them. These are for basic authentication we're going to set up. Okay, so usually when we are going to use Next.auth. So if we are having Prisma and Next.auth in the same application, we can actually use something called Prisma Next.auth. I mean, 1 minute. It's a Prisma Next.auth adapter, and it will generate these models, account session. This is much more sophisticated, but I don't want the Prisma to know that I'm using Next.auth. I want them to be separate as much as possible. This model, this database schema I create is ignorant of, I mean, what is the word? Does not know that what auth system I'm using. So it has the user table. I'm having name and image. UID is the primary key. Also we join 3 tables. So I'm going to have this admin only for the role-based authentication. So we are actually going to have middleware. Last time when we were using Next.js, we were using Next auth guard, right? But this time, no, Next.js is just Express and tRPC. We'll be having authentication authorization middleware, where we will be actually doing a query, database query, to see if the UID has admin access. We are going to have 2 types of registration. One is credential based, where we will be getting the email and password, and we don't save the password, we will be actually hashing the password. The second one is we're going to allow the auth provider way of doing the authentication registration. Right now in this tutorial we will be seeing how to set up the Google Auth. That's the database schema. We have bare minimum table, name, image, UID there. Admin does not have any additional information. It just has this UID, and this UID has to be there in the user table as well. We cannot have an admin with UID that's not there in the user table. Credentials, I'm storing the email, password hash, and there is a link back to the UID. Auth provider, I'm linking back to the UID, and the only information is the auth provider type, which is going to be Google or credentials. So we have our basic database schema ready. I'm going to do the migration. Okay. So this thing will generate this migration file. This is an SQL file. Okay. It created the table, and also it created this unique indexes, and it created this foreign keys. Fine. Now let's use the Explorer. Prisma comes with Prisma Studio, and we can do some basic operations here, like adding. Also, when we want to do admin access, we can do this. Okay, we can update it, and we can delete it. Now if I try to delete this user, it's going to fail because there is an admin entry for that. We have to actually delete that first. I don't think they have some cascading delete or something, so we have to go in sequence. Okay, so that is the okay, we have set up the Prisma. Now let's export the Prisma client. I'm going to have index.ts in the root. We can have it inside the source directory, but I'm going to have a index.ts. I'm going to import. So this Prisma client gets generated once we do the Prisma generate. Okay, you remember we did the Prisma migrate, and that will automatically update the Prisma client as well. That will also run the Prisma generate, and it will create a Prisma client that will be really useful in the whole development process. It will generate all sorts of types that we can do into our database in plain TypeScript, and we can use it in a lot of places in the whole monorepo. I'm getting the Prisma client and I'm exporting the Prisma client by creating a new instance of it. Okay, now from outside of this library we can install this dependency foundation tRPC/db, and we can import the Prisma from the root. I'm also going to do one more thing. I'm going to export all the types. So this is actually a client. You can use this to, for example, create a new user. See, everything is typed. This is a Prisma client. This is different. We will actually use this in our tRPC server to do the database CRUD operations. The type is different. Here I'm going to export. You can selectively export specific things. For example, this is an enum. Okay, it got generated because I specified a enum type here. So you can selectively export types one by one, but for simplicity I'm going to export everything. So basically they can install the foundation tRPC/db package library, and they can import any type of types from the Prisma client in the types route. I mean the package name /types. That's all about the DB library. See you in the next section. Okay, our applications are ready. We also have set up the database library. Now let's move on to create. So in this section we're going to create a simple tRPC server, and we will be creating a tRPC client library. We will be exporting a tRPC client for that can be used in both the server components and in client components in the Next.js. So we will be setting up a one route tRPC server. We will actually run that tRPC server inside the Express app, and we will create the clients, and we will actually fetch data from the database in our Next.js application. So inside the lib, I'm going to create a tRPC-server directory. I'm going to initialize a new project. Let's also name it this way. I'm going to have tRPC/server as a dependency. Also, we need to have the foundation tRPC/db as a dependency. Okay, we're going to import the Prisma client, and in this section we are going to only fetch all the users. Fine. Let's set up tRPC now. I'm going to keep every file in the root of the tRPC server library. I'm going to import init tRPC. I'm going to generate use a tRPC to create and I'm also going to export a router and a procedure. Okay, so this procedure, it's going to be public. Later we will be creating private procedure where it will ask for set of roles, and it will make sure that only the people with that roles can access that procedure. So we are going to use this procedure to create the routes. I'm going to create a routers directory. Let's create an auth.ts. That's auth router. I'm going to import the public procedure and the router from the tRPC with the tRPC file which we just generated. Public procedure and the router. Let's also import the Prisma from the DB. I'm going to create the auth router routes. Here we can have, so inside the routes, we will be using the same routes for gathering all. This is a part, right? Auth is one of the routes. We will be having an index file here which will combine all other routes. Here I'm going to have only one route called users. I'm going to use the public procedure dot. There are multiple ways. One is we can do mutation, we can do query, we can do subscription. In this tutorial, we are going to only see the query and mutation, and we can also have input. So in the later sections, we will be using Zod to create schema files, which will be used as input files here. But in this simple demo, we are just going to have one query. We're going to use a Prisma user find many. That's what we're going to return. So this is one of the routes. Now let's create a root route that combines everything. We need the router from the tRPC. We need the auth routes from the auth route, which we just created. And I'm going to create a app router. That is the root router. I'm going to again use the same router. So I had some confusion here because the previous versions had something like t.merge, but now we use the router to combine more nested routes. That's what we're using here. Okay, the same router object, this router function we use here, we use for combining the root routes as well. I'm going to call this auth, and I'm adding the auth routes there. I'm going to create two types here. This is essential, okay? The one disadvantage in using tRPC is both frontend and backend needs to use TypeScript. That's the first one. In the previous videos I did using Next.js, GraphQL, and the front end was we can like change the backend technology, and those that will not affect. But here the front end and back end needs to be there in TypeScript, and also they have to be in a part of they have to be in a monorepo, because we will be sharing this app router a lot through this monorepo. Wherever we want, we require the type of one of these return type of the query, mutation, subscription, etc. We will be carrying around this app router throughout. I'm going to generate that using app type of, and I'm passing the app router. So this we will be using to create the tRPC client, and that's how the tRPC client knows the type of the backend. I'm also going to create a tRPC type, app router type. I'm going to use something called a infer router outputs, and I'm going to pass app router there as a generic. See, that's how we get this is okay. This is the type of the whole backend. Okay, and we will be carrying around, we will be importing this type from the tRPC server library. Okay, I think we are good. Fine. The last one is we need to actually create the Express middleware. That's what we will be importing in our API, and we will incorporate the tRPC server inside our Express server. So I'm having this index.ts export const tRPC Express. I'm going to use a function called create Express middleware from the tRPC server adapter. Create Express. Let's try to import that. tRPC server adapters Express. What? Okay, here we have it. And this will get our router, the app router, the root router we just exported from the index file. That's it. We have our tRPC Express middleware ready. Now let's go to the API. We have to install the server library. And in the index file, I'm going to import the tRPC Express which we just created. And that is in the root also. Okay. And we will use tRPC as a route. Use. That's going to be inside tRPC. You can have tRPC, the whole thing in the root instead of using this. But I'm going to have it separately. And I'm just passing it. That's it. We have our Express and tRPC working together. We need to access it. Let's run it. There is a unwanted main file, main property. So now the backend is running. No query not found. There is a tRPC playground. Okay, so I have to look into that. And okay, so I figured it out how to access that users route in the auth route users. Yep. So basically it asks us to use a dot notation. I was using the slash, and tRPC was not able to identify that. So it has to be accessed in a REST API. So we access this sub route, and then inside that every procedure call needs to be accessed with a dot like this. Okay, we don't have any data. I'm going to have some data here, and have to run the Prisma Studio. I'm going to add some users. Karthik. And when I run it again, I'm going to get back the result. Okay, we can technically host this and export this API. Now we are using tRPC. This is a REST API. But when we use in a front end, written in some other technology, when you access this REST API, we won't have the type safety in the client. The beauty of the tRPC is the tRPC client will be always without any bridge. Like in the last videos, we used GraphQL code gen, which will create the queries and mutation, types of the queries and mutation for the client. But in tRPC, we skip that bridge part. It's always simultaneously, the client will always know the type of the server. And we achieve that by using the type information. Okay, the type information, the router type. So now we have the server ready with one route. Let's try that. We also had a simple demo here. Let's create a tRPC client library. So I'm going to create a folder called tRPC client. Here I'm going to initialize a new project there. Let's also rename that. Here we need to create some install some dependencies. We are going to use tRPC client, React query, and another library to bind these things together. First thing, we need to actually import the tRPC server library, because we need to import that app router type in order to generate the tRPC client, and hence the client knows exactly the type. So I'm installing that inside I mean the local library. I'm installing the TanStack React query, and I'm installing tRPC client, and I'm also installing tRPC React query. One issue here is that the TanStack React query, the current version is the major version is 5, and that won't work with the tRPC we have. So I had to use that version 4.36.1. The others are fine. Okay. We are going to have two types of clients, as I said. One client can be used in the server component, and one can be used in the client component. That will be actually using the React query ones. That will be giving the use query, use mutation hooks. From the tRPC client, I'm going to use something called create tRPC proxy client. Create tRPC proxy client. And this will get links. I'm going to import the HTTP batch link from the tRPC client again. And there we will be specifying the URL. I'm going to hard code the URL here. That's it. And later we can actually use the header here. We will be using that for authentication. Here in this client, we can use the cookies, next cookies. So right now that is enough. I'm also going to add the client that we will use in the client files. Client components, I'm importing, instead of the create tRPC proxy client, I'm using create tRPC React. Actually, one more thing, I forgot to actually type this. We have to do this. Okay, that's now we get every types. See, this will actually return back all the users, and we can use this to fetch the users information in the server components. Now if I take this out, then we don't have any type safety. Okay. Similarly, we will be also creating the client. Okay, so we don't actually in the server tRPC client, we specify the link, we will specify the URL here, but for the client we need to actually create a provider, and we have to wrap the entire wrap the part of application which we use the hooks. This is going to be a tsx file, and it's a client component. So I use this because I know we are going to use next applications. Okay. I'm importing the tRPC from the client one. Okay, let's rename this to tRPC client. tRPC is for server, tRPC client is for getting the client, fetching information from the client. I'm going to create a component called provider. I'm going to create query client, and this comes from the stack query. So also import the use state. I don't have any. Oh, I have to. Okay. So the tRPC client, I'm going to add React as a peer dependency. We will also need Next.js to be installed as a peer dependency, because we will be using the header from the cookie. Also, I have to add the types of the React. Now this is happy. So basically I'm using use state because I don't want to initialize this again and again. This will make sure that it only gets initialized when the component mounts. This is different from this, right? And I'm also using the same technique to create a tRPC client. I'm again using the oops, okay, naming conflict. So for the server one, we did everything in one go. Here we will be also setting the headers using the React Next cookie. But for the client one, we have to create this provider component, and inside that we are setting up we are creating the create client, and also we are using this syntax. We are passing a function, so it only gets called once, not every time it renders. And there I'm passing the almost same thing. So we will come back to the headers. Okay, I'm going to delete this, And I'm going to return so we get the tRPC client here. I'm using this tRPC is from the client we created. I'm using the provider there. I'm using the query client provider from the React query, and I'm passing the client and query client. Okay, so this needs some tsconfig setup. Let's do that. We already have one in the. I'm going to use the same thing. I'm going to enable the JSX React. Restore TS server. Still it's complaining. Okay, it asks me to import React. Now it asks me to enable TS ES module interop in the tsconfig. Okay. Now TypeScript is ready. It's happy. Now we can use this inside our page to fetch information. Okay. First we have to install the requirement in the web application. I'm going to add foundation tRPC client. And in the layout file, we need to import the provider and I'm going to wrap the entire application. Okay. We're going to do two types of demo. We need to actually check both the clients, right? So I have wrapped this. Maybe let's demo that. Let's do the server demo first and we'll come back here. Here I'm going to import the tRPC client. Remember, the tRPC is a server one. Users, you can await it. This is a server component. tRPC.auth.users.query. Okay, I'm going to just print the entire message while we get back. Now let's run the application. Also make sure the API is running. I'm running the front end. Local host 3000. We get back the result. Okay. I think this is a very minimal setup. We have a whole monorepo. We have a backend running Express. We have a front end running Next.js. We have a DB separate library for the DB, separate library for the tRPC server. We'll be having all the logic, the router logic inside the tRPC server library. And we also have the two types of clients. We just tested the first one, which is a server type. Now let's do the client one. In the layout, I'm going to wrap with a provider. Here I'm going to mark this as a use client. And the client components cannot be asynchronous. We'll come back here. And I'm going to import the tRPC client. Okay. Now tRPC auth users dot. Now we have this hooks. The tRPC client understands that the users is a query. It gives us like 4 types of things. Use query, use infinite query, use suspense query, use suspense infinite query. We're going to use query. We don't have any arguments or anything here. Now we get back all. So this is from the React query. You get unstack query. we get all these types things going on: status, remove, refetch, is stale, is refetching. We have all these things. I'm going to only take the data, and the data is typed, okay, is fully typed. Now this is importing it from the client component. Now if I refresh, we get the data. Let's add one more user. Let's call this person shadcn. Okay, it already fetched it. Okay, that won't typically happen, but I don't know why it automatically fetched it. Oh, maybe because, okay, Tanstack query has this feature called when I refocus, when I unfocus and refocus, it fetches. Okay, so that's why when I modify the database, when I refocus this window, the tab, it automatically fetches the information. I also wanted to show one more problem here. Let's get back to the server type. Now, see, I fixed it. The problem is Next.js, the page already knew the newer data I inserted into a database, right? But when I revert back, when I'm working on this server component, there is a drawback. It get cached. You can modify that, but in a development environment, it comes as a drawback. So if you want to refresh, you have to actually delete the .next which contains the cache, and you have to rerun it. Now we have to when you refresh, you get the fresh data. Okay, so this is a drawback when we work with server components. Server components are very efficient, but the developer experience is somewhat rough. Okay, now our monorepo is coming up really nicely. We have a full set of operation happening: database, API, tRPC client, front end. Everything is working in tandem. In the next section, we will continue to work on this. We will create the forms library, UI library. We will set up the authentication and so on. Okay, so see you in the next section. Bye. Hi. In this section, we're going to create a private procedure. The last section, the procedure we created was public and anybody can access that route. So in this section, we're going to create a context and a middleware in the tRPC, and we are going to have some JWT token verification happening. So this section, we're also going to do authorization, role-based authorization. Okay, it's exciting. Let's get started. So inside the tRPC server, first I'm going to start with types. I'm going to have a type called role. It's going to be admin or manager. In the Prisma schema, we already have this admin table. I'm going to add one more thing called manager. So this gives more variety in the demo. Okay, and when I saved it, Prisma format will help us in creating the join from the user model. So it assumed it's one-to-many relationship, but it's one-to-one, and that's also optional. Let's do the migration. npm migrate dev add manager. Now everything is updated. I get this. So I just did the database migration. Now we have the manager table there. Let's continue. I created this types file called role. So the idea is we're going to have two steps in this authentication, AuthN and AuthZ. In tRPC, we have two steps. One, we have a function where we can set the context function and the middleware function. In the context, we're going to just take the token out of the header. Okay, that's optional. The user may not send a token, right? May be unauthenticated. So we do that lightweight operation, just taking that string, the token string from the header in the context. In the middleware, we take the token, we verify the token, and optionally the middleware also gets a number of roles. And then we will have one more logic, which we will be actually fetching the admin and manager database, model table, to see if the user is present in those tables, and we will do some logic there. So let's start with the context. I'm going to create this context.ts. I'm going to create tRPC context. This is going to get a request and a response. Let's also type this. I'm going to get the type from this adapter. Oops, okay. So I get the type from the standalone adapter. I don't know why they don't have that in the Express. Maybe create Express context. Okay, then we have to type this. Fine. Fine. I was wrong initially. So we get the request and response. Let's fetch the header. Request.headers.authorization, and then we will fetch the token by using header. It's optional. People may not attach the authorization token at all. And then we will proceed to split that using the space, and we fetch the first item, the second one. So it's going to look like bearer space something. We fetch this part, and I'm returning the request, response, and the token. Cool, right? And I'm also exporting the type. It is awaited return type of this function. That's the type of the context, and we use that context in other places to exactly get this return type. Okay. Now we have to update this. So before creating, we can do this context. Type of and create tRPC context. Now we are using this T to create the router and the procedure. Now when we go inside one of here, context, how cool is that? See, because we created the context, so basically the context had the token here. It automatically understood that the context gets a request response, but it sends back the token. That happens because we do we do this. We let the tRPC know that the context is going to be the type of whatever the return type of this create tRPC context. Now we set up the context. I want this context function to be simple. So this is not performant demanding task, right? We are just doing some string manipulation and we are returning it. I want this to be really light because this context function will be accessed every time in all requests. We will do the heavy demanding one. We have two things to do. One, we have to actually verify this token, and also if the private procedure requires some role, we have to also do the authorization. That's more database reads. Okay, so we will do them inside a middleware. Let's create a middleware. I'm going to keep the middleware in the root. I'm going to call this middleware is auth, authenticated, authorized. First, let's work on the authentication. Next we will be doing this. Okay, we can it's going to be an array of role. Oh, role. Let's rename this. Okay, so now this is an array of roles, but we will come back to this point. Let's first do the authentication part. Here, so this is going to be not a simple function, but we're going to use t from the tRPC.middleware. And this is going to get an async function. Here we can get the context. Let's get all the options and let's destructure, get back the, wait a minute. Okay. Auth has context and we destructure the token from it. Okay. We destructure the context and we destructure the token from it. And if there is no token, I'm going to throw a new error, tRPC error, saying token not found. So right now the middleware is the TypeScript is not happy because we have to actually return the next function so that the action will continue. I'm just going to console log the token. And inside the try catch, I'm going to try to verify the token. Okay, so for this we need to have the JSON web token. Let's install it. Also, we have to save this next.secret as an environment variable. First, let's install the JSON web token. This is what we will be using for verifying the JWT. Also, we need to install the types for it. Now we can import the verify. So I'm just getting the I'm verifying the token and I'm getting the UID out of the token. The token actually we are going to use Next.auth, and inside the token we will be having email, name, image of the user image, but we only want the UID here, so that's what I'm doing. So if it fails, if the verification fails, so this happens if the user is sending us some fabricated JWT. We are throwing an error forbidden along with invalid token. Let's create a .env file here, next auth. I'm going to just call it tRPC secret, and we have to actually share this environment variable. Actually we have to keep this .env inside the app application. Okay, that's what they executes this TypeScript code. Fine. So if everything is successful, let's also get the next here. Oops. So it's good to actually have the options. Good. So basically, if everything is successful, we are adding the UID to the context. That's all it happens. So that's for the authentication. We have to now test it. This is the middleware. Now we have to actually create the private route, private procedure. Create context, create tRPC context. See. It's interesting because I did not expect to get an error here, but the router is from this T, right? And the type of this T is expecting context, and the TypeScript is complaining here to actually add the tag context, which is really good developer experience. Now let's create the route procedure. Let's call it private procedure, and okay, use. We have to use the use and pass the is auth. Fine. Now this is the private procedure, and this requires a token to be passed in the header, and it also has to obey, it has to be verified with this JWT secret. So we will be setting up Next.auth in the later sections, but in order to test this middleware, the authentication, I'm going to fabricate my own JWT token. So basically, I'm going to get one of these user. We have a UID called Karthik. I'm going to create that object here. Okay, so this is a valid object, but the secret is I have to use this JWT secret as a signature. Okay, now this is a valid JWT token. What I'm going to do, I'm going to use in the client. Headers. Okay, the header is going to be a function. Authorization, and I'm going to just hard code it. Okay, that's for this is for testing. Later we will be getting the token from the logged in user. Let's mark it async to just remind ourselves that we can do a asynchronous operation inside that method. Similarly, I'm going to do the same thing for the provider also. Same token. Fine. So basically, I fabricated a token along with, since we know the secret, we can generate that token which only has the UID, which is the only information I expect inside the middleware also. Okay. Fine. Now let's modify this to use the private procedure. Fine. Now let's try to access that. So using the server components tRPC, this is the client. Let's comment this for a bit and fetch the information. So I have to run the applications. Okay. This happens because the information is already cached. I told you it's a developer experience is a bit rough. Maybe they have a solution, but that's how I do it. Now, token not found, so we can actually do this, manage this error and display a better alert message or a toast message. But the point is, now we have the authentication working. So inside the middleware, we are displaying the information. I'm also going to console log the UID. That's the verified information, right? That's the encoded data. Now I am uncommenting this. And I have to actually delete this again. Delete the cache. Rerun it. What happened? Invalid token. Okay, I understand that. I think let's console log this. Okay, again, it's getting cached. Okay, so basically, I forgot to configure the .env. So let's do that. I'm going to require the .env, and also we install that. So make sure you have .env installed. I'm requiring that and I'm just configuring it. Okay, and also we have the DNB setup. Now I have to delete the cache, rerun the next application, and then now if I refresh the browser, you're going to get back the data. That means that the token went through. You can see this is the token. This is the environment variable. I just wanted to make sure that the environment variable is there. Let's delete that. Oh, no caching. That's the authentication part. Okay, we get the token, I verify it, I take the UID. If it does not verify, and I'm actually attaching. One more thing is, inside here in the context, now we get the UID also, because we added the token in the context, we added the UID in the middleware, and the tRPC understands that. I'm not specifying anywhere, but it knows I'm adding that UID there, and it just adds it in the type information. So even inside these routes, this is very helpful actually. We know who the requester is. That's all about the authentication. Let's move on to the authorization. So we already created this role, and I'm really confused about the whole file system. Here I'm going to get an array of roles. Okay. Now what we can do this admin, manager. Okay. That's fine. Now we got this roles. If there are roles, okay, length greater than 0. If there are roles specified in this protected procedure, I'm going to do the authorization, which is I'm going to write a function here that checks the manager and admin tables. So I'm going to use a function called authorize user, which gets the UID, the requester, and the roles expected. Let's create a util file here. So I'm going to copy paste the whole function, and we will I will just explain it. First, we need the Prisma from the DB, because that's what we use to fetch data. And we need a role and tRPC error from the tRPC server. Okay, so what happens is it gets the UID and roles. If the role is not there or the length is 0, we already checked this there. Maybe I don't have to check it here. Okay. So we're checking for any roles. If there is nothing, I'm just returning. And we are going to create one more function here. This is the expected roles, and inside this function, it's going to actually do the Prisma query to the manager and admin, and it returns back the role checked promises when I have to execute them together parallelly. And I'm seeing if some of the requested roles, that's the logic I'm going with. If the private procedure is expecting admin and manager, here the logic goes like the requester has to have one of the required roles. So inside the user require role, I'm getting the UID and one role using a switch case, and it's type safe. Okay, we can only use one of these. We cannot use any other roles. So inside the switch case, I'm doing the Prisma query, Prisma admin find unique manager. I'm actually resolving the promises inside. So we can actually collect, if you have more roles, we can collect all the promises and execute them in one go. But I'm actually resolving the promise inside the function. So this step is not required. Okay, maybe not. Okay. So here I'm not awaiting it. I'm getting all the promises into one and I'm resolving them in one go. And I'm checking if this contains, this is an array of Boolean, and if any one of them has to be true. So I'm just checking this is an array of Boolean, I'm using the sum, and if one has to be true. If nothing is true, then I'm returning user does not have the required roles. This is authorized user. Now let's do it. Let's test it. This Karthik guy now does not have the admin access or the manager access. We have to actually restart the whole Prisma Studio to get the updated one along with the manager. Now the truth is the user does not have the admin access or the manager access. This is the private procedure, and I'm expecting admin and manager actually. Now again I have to delete the cache, run the application. Now it should fail because the user does not have admin or manager. Fine. You know what, let's do the private, the client side way of doing things, so that I don't have to keep deleting the cache. Next.js cache. Fine. Now what we are getting, we will be getting that in the console. We get user does not have the required role error from the tRPC. Okay. Now let's add one of the roles. So I'm going to add the admin manager role. Now if I, okay, so it automatically fetched it. Now we get the information. We don't have the error. Fine. This is role-based authentication. Now let's also do one more check. Now the user has manager access. Let's check this condition. Okay, this private procedure requires admin access. The user has manager access. When I go back, the thing failed and we are getting back the forbidden error. Okay, so it will display the user does not have required role error. I think that proves it. Right now we don't have the error, we get the data back. Okay, so based on the roles required, we can create any number of procedures. If you don't want to create a separate procedure, we can take this, and instead of using the procedure directly, you can do this. Import the T, import the Auth, and you are good to go. If you have like a lot of combinations, some of the routes may be accessed. You have a lot of roles, agents, representatives, managers, so on. You can directly use this instead of creating a procedure separately. Okay, that's all about the authentication and authorization. The next sections we will be creating the auth. We will set up the, right now we are doing this ugly way of passing the headers. The next section we will set up the next auth, so that both our client and server tRPC clients will get the actual logged in users token. Okay, see you in the next section. Bye. Hi. In this section, we're going to create a forms library. We're going to create a Zod schema for registration. We're going to create a form management hook using React hook React. I keep forgetting the name of the library. Apologies. We will install that in a bit. And then we will be creating a mutation for creating a registration, for creating a user. And we will use that form management hook in our actual page, and we will do the mutation. That's what we're going to do. Let's get started. I'm going to create a forms library, forms directory. Let's go into the forms directory. I'm going to initialize a new project. We also have to rename it. Fine. Now the required dependencies. I'm going to add Zod React hook form. Okay, that's what I keep getting it wrong. React hook form. And also we need hook form / resolvers to make the Zod and React hook form work together. Okay. Also we need to install the DB dependency, because sometimes for the Zod schema we have this auth type enum in the Prisma, right? Google or credentials. So we need to have that in the Zod schema. So that's why I'm having that. That's it. tRPC. I'm going to create a src /schemas. So this is where we are going to have all the schema. I'm going to import Zod Z from Zod, and I'm going to create the schema for the registration. I'm going to have name, which is mandatory, which is not mandatory actually. Okay, the name and the email and password are mandatory, and we only have one small validation for the password. We can have more complex requirements, validations for the password, but here I'm keeping it. The only validation required is it has to be more than 5. Okay, at least 6. Name and image are going to be string but optional. Let's create the form management hook. So the registration is going to be a client component. I'm going to import the Zod use form from React hook form, Z from Zod. Also let's import the form schema register from the schemas. Okay, I'm going to export the type. We can do this z.infer. We can pass the type of the schema which is created, and we can get back the type. Okay, now we get back the type. So email and password are mandatory, name and image are optional. Now let's create the hook use form register. I'm going to just return the use form, and I'm passing the use form type as a generic, and I also have to pass a resolver. For that, I'm going to use Zod resolver from the hook form we installed, right? Add hook form resolvers /Zod. So it helps React hook form to actually work with a lot of these validation libraries. We are going to use the Zod, and we get back the Zod resolver, and I'm passing the form schema register inside it. And this is a form management hook, and we get back a lot of things like register, set value, set errors, a lot of form management functions. Okay, and we have the form library. Okay, for this section later we'll be creating a lot other form schemas like login and so on. This section we are only dealing with the registration. So I'm going to create a route here, and this route is going to be a public route. Okay, we don't want registered users here. People are actually registering. So register with credentials. I'm using public procedure dot input. Here actually I have to install the form library here to import the ZARD schema. Let's import the form schema from here, and I'm passing it. Okay, and this is going to be a mutation. Now what happens is we can get the context or input, and the input is going to be the form schema which we just passed here. Fine. Here we also have to import the Prisma from the DB, which already we are importing it. Here I'm returning Prisma dot user dot create okay, actually we have to do some checks also. So this is registering with email, so we have to make sure that we don't have an existing user with that email, right? So let's make this async. So I'm checking the credentials table. I'm passing the email. The email is going to be input.email. Okay, so if there is an existing user, I'm throwing, you can actually throw tRPC error. How do we throw that? tRPC code message. Okay, this is message, and we also need a code there. Bad request, unauthorized, parse error. Okay, bad request. Fine. Now that's out of the way. We have to hash the password. I'm generating the salt, and I'm using the bcrypt to create the okay, so I need to install bcrypt.js. Also we need the UUID. So once the password is done, we are going to generate a unique ID. Okay, I need to install the types. Also for the UUID. Fine. So I'm hashing the password. The password is going to be let's destructure it. Email, password, image, name, so that I don't have to do this. Fine. So we checked for existing user, and I'm destructured. I'm hashing the password, and I'm generating a unique ID. That's it. Now we can do the creation. Prisma.user.create data, passing the UID which I just created, passing the name, image, and then I'm going to create the credentials. Create. I'm passing the email and the password hash. Also, I'm going to create an auth provider. We have to mention that this is the type is going to be auth provider type. That comes from the DB types dot credentials. That's it. Okay, and one more thing, we have to actually sign the token. Even while registering, we are going to return back the token. I'm using sign from the JSON web token. Remember, we used the verify in the middleware. The same library, I'm using the sign, and I'm just adding the UID. You can have more actually. Okay, that's it. I'm going to return back the user and token. So that's the mutation. We did quite a bit of things here. We check for existing user, we hashed the password, we generated a UID, and we created a user account, we signed a token, and we are returning back the user and the token. Fine, now we can start working with our UI. So I'm going to create a register / page.tsx. Register. So in the UI now, we have to actually add the forms library. This is a client component. I'm going to import the what? src register. We already saw a simple a sneak peek inside this hook. Remember, it gives back a lot of form management functions like register, set value, and so on. Here I'm going to create a simple form. We are not going to be worried about the styling yet. The next section we will be using shadcn UI. To make things beautiful. Right now we are not worried about it. This thing is typed as well. Remember, we use the same schema, the form schema register, in our tRPC mutation. We are using the same Zard schema here in the UI also, and it's completely typed. Okay, and it also takes the optional factor as well. The name and image are going to be optional. Let's start with the email, password, or password. I have to mention it as a password. This name, and I'm not going to deal with the image because we have to set up the storage and so on. In the upcoming videos, the next projects, we will be actually getting the image in the registration page. Okay, I decided it's a bit complicated to do in this project. Submit. Type is going to be submit, and we get the handle submit. In the on submit, we can do this. We can get back the data. Okay. Fine, let's have a look. Maybe let's have a simple placeholder. Fine. Let's run the applications. Oops. That's our registration form, and I'm not worried about the styling yet. But when I let's do one more thing. Form state errors. So when I start working with the UI library, we'll be having a label component that gets the particular error of that particular component, I mean element. Right now I'm just going to console log it. When I click it, we're going to have, oops, what is happening here? On submit, handle submit, data. It shouldn't happen actually. Fine, now, okay. So it returned back errors saying we have invalid email, string must be 6 characters or more. Also, you see that it automatically gets highlighted, I mean focused. Let's create a user1@email.com. Now it says the password is empty. Now if I give 5 characters, it's still going to give that error. 6 characters, user1. Now we are going to get this object, which is different, right? We logged this inside the on submit, which means that the form validation is successful and we got back this error. Fine, now we can import the tRPC client. I'm going to do the mutation. Mutate. So we have 2 functions here, mutate and mutate async. That's what we're going to get. And other than that, we have a lot of other helper states like is loading, is pass, is success, status, variables, and so on. Right now, I only want the mutate async. And also I have to make sure this is an asynchronous operation. Await. How cool is that? See, everything is typed. We don't have to worry. What if I just pass this data? We can simply pass this data because the tRPC mutation and the form React hook form are using the exact same Zard schema and they match perfectly, right? You know, it's very satisfying to see that. I think it returns back an error, returns back the result. I need to console log that. Actually, in the next section, after setting up the next auth, here, if the registration is successful, we will once again use the next auth / react sign-in method, sign-in function to sign in into the next auth. So we are going to use next auth for managing the cookie sessions and so on. So right now, in this section, we are only focused on creating a form schema, creating the form, doing this validation, and wow, it got refreshed. Fine. Now we got back the token. Remember, we returned the token and the user from the registration, and we got back the token, we got back the user information. So in the upcoming sections, we will be using the next auth so that they manage this token. Yeah, so you've seen the next section, right? Hi. In this section, we're going to create a network library. There we will be having the next auth options. And then we will use that next auth options in our front end. Then in our Next.js to have our API route. And yeah. So in the last section, we saw the registration with credentials, form management, mutation, etc. In this section, we will be implementing the login mutation, and we will make the tRPC server work along with our next auth. So inside the libs, I'm going to create a new directory called network. Inside the network, I'm going to initialize a new project. I'm also going to rename network. So why I keep doing this is, if you go look at the node modules, now everything is organized. Where is everyone? So here, so the API is only using the tRPC server. The web is using form and tRPC client. This is much more clean way to organize. I mean, nobody's going to go inside the node modules to see that, but still I find it, cozy and organized inside a directory like this. Okay. Also, it avoids conflicts with existing libraries. Like I can have something like I can have an internal library called React Query. I don't have to worry about someone else having the same name for their own their npm package. So that's why I'm renaming. Okay. Dependencies. In the network, I'm going to add next auth as a peer dependency, because it does not make sense to have it as a dependency. Only the applications that already has next auth installed will be importing this library. Okay, so that's the only peer dependency. And so actually we also need a JSON web token, because inside the next auth we will be verifying the token. That's a dependency. And also we have one more dependency called tRPC client. Okay, so here in the next auth option, we will be doing the Google registration. Okay, so once a person signs in with Google, there's no registration in OAuth providers, right? Once a user signs in with Google, we will check if that user with the unique ID exists in our database, or else we will be doing the registration. Technically, we can also import the Prisma. This is also existing in the library, and we can have that Prisma client to do the mutation, but this is a much more robust way. These are two require dependencies. Also, we have to install the types of the JSON web token as a dev dependency. So these are the required things. I'm going to create src/auth/auth options.ts. So in this whole workshop, in the previous types of when I was working with GraphQL, the network library was much more important. We had GraphQL codegen, all the generated mutations and queries and so on. In this boilerplate, we only have the next auth options. Okay. So I'm importing the type from the next auth. I'm importing the type next auth options, and it already complains that I need at least the providers. We're going to have two types of providers. Okay, one is the Google provider that we can import from. VS Code is not helping me. That we can import from next auth providers Google. The second one is the credentials provider. Okay, let's do the credentials. I'm giving it a name, credentials, and also it requires an authorize function. Authorize is missing. So this happens when the user logs in using the next auth. And this authorize is expecting a return type promise of, or it is expecting the something like this. Okay, so we will do it. We have to do a couple of things here. If the credentials is not there, I'm just returning null. If not, I'm destructuring the email and password. If no email, or if the email or password, if one of them is empty, I'm returning an error. So let's use our tRPC now. You have to make sure that you use the tRPC client from the server, not the client one. It's a wordplay, you know. tRPC client is something that we use to access tRPC server, and we have two types of tRPC clients. One to use from the client components and one we use from the server components. You have to be sure that you take the tRPC client that we use from the server environment. This is the login. Okay, so you have to work on the login mutation. Let's go back to the routers. Here I'm going to create a login. So before that, we have to actually create the start schema. So here inside the schemas, we can actually extend it. Extend the existing forms, existing schemas. I'm going to call this sign in equal to form schema registration dot pick, and we can pick the properties. So login requires these two things. Fine. Now I'm going to just copy paste. I'm going to create, let's call it sign in. Create the form management hook. Okay, so I'm importing the schema, I'm creating the type, I'm creating the hook. Fine, now we have the schema ready. Now let's work on the mutation. Sign in. This is going to be a public procedure. Dot input is going to be form schema sign in. Let's import that. Dot mutation, and this is going to be an async function, and we can destructure the context and the input. Here we have to do some things. We have to fetch the credentials. Actually, we can have a separate directory for each route, and we can have these functions separately, but yeah, you can do it. I'm just making sure that we have the email ready there, email existing in our database. Okay, if there is no email also I'm doing the check with the bcrypt. I'm comparing the password with the password hash. I just okay, actually this thing work. It looks a bit weird here because we have to actually do two guard classes. One, if there are no credentials, we return back. Let's do it. If there are no credentials, I don't want to send two different errors. Okay, I want the attacker. I want to confuse attacker. Now it's good. It's better. If there are no user, we are going to say invalid email or password. If the user is there but the password is wrong, we are going to again throw the same type of error. And then I'm going to, now we have like made sure that the user exists and the password is right. Now we have to sign the token and we are returning the token. That's the login mutation. The good thing is we did not specify any DTOs here, right? Any DTOs for input or output. We used to do it in the previous type of ways in the GraphQL, and the GraphQL is amazing. In a lot of things, there are some shortcomings in the tRPC, but the best thing is I'm not specifying the input and output types anywhere. We have this SARD schema, and this is like used in multiple places, right? For management also. So I love this is amazing. Now we are back again in the auth options after creating the login mutation. Let's do the login. tRPC dot auth dot sign in dot mutate, and then it's going to get the email and password. So you see, everything is typed well, and we are destructured email and password there, and we have to update it. Fine. If there are no user, if this thing fails, I'm going to throw an error. I mean, I think the mutate itself throws error, right? What other thing that can go wrong? But there could be some other actions like that can fail, right? So that's why I'm having this. Okay. Authentication fail. I want the error message to be vague. Fine. I'm going to return these things. Okay. Fine. So that's the authorize function method. The authorize function will get the email and password. I'm checking that. I'm doing the actual mutation. And if it fails, I'm throwing an error. If it's successful, I'm returning the ID, name, image, and email. And frankly, this auth options took a lot of trial and error from me. Okay. I just ended up with whatever we have here. Okay, let's continue. So we just set up the Google provider, and also I have to do the env, environment variable setup. Oh. Okay. You have to get the Google client ID and client secret. Okay, so in order to get the client ID and client secret, you have to create a project in Google Console. In the previous video, I gave a small demo. You have to create a Firebase project. Okay, I'll show you there. So shortcut is you can create a new project in your Firebase. So in order to do the Google login, Auth provider login authentication, you need a project to be created in the Google. You can also create a project here. Okay, new project, but I created it in the Google. In the authentication, you go to the sign in method, you add a provider and enable this Google, and then you click it here. You click here, you will get the client ID and client secret, and that's not sufficient. You go here in the API and services, you have to actually set up the redirect URLs matching what the next auth would expect once the sign in is successful. Come on. The wrong Wi-Fi is connected. 1 minute. Okay, you select this project, you come to API services, you click the credentials, and inside the OAuth client IDs, click here. You have to populate your origins here. Okay, so I added 3000, 3001, 3002 because sometimes in a monorepo we have multiple front-end applications, and for development we need all these things, and also you have to add the protection domains also. And you have to add the authorized redirect URIs. That has to be like this: /API/auth /callback/Google. That has to be added for our development origins and also for the protection domain. Okay, once you do this, once you update this, click save. That's how you take the Google client ID, secret ID. Okay, click this and copy that. You'll see that. Okay, once you're done, you come to the Google, the web env, you paste it. You also have to do one more thing. We have this next auth secret. You have to paste this as well, and they have to match exactly. So I have this JWT secret. That's a simple text. You can have a complex string there, and it has to match. That's it. Let's proceed. All right, now I'm going to enable debugging true, and the session is going to be, the strategy is JWT, and the max age, I'm going to create a simple constant here, 1 into 24 hours into 60 minutes into 60 seconds. We can have a, okay, so I'm using the max age there, the constant value, which is the number of seconds in 1 day. So inside the JWT, we have to set up the encoding and decoding logic. Okay, so for encoding, it gets the token, which is an object, and it returns back a string. We encode that token, we return back the string. For decoding, we get back a string and we return back an object. The JWT is from the Next.jwt. Okay, for encoding, there is no token provider, the token is undefined, and I'm going to destructure a few things. I told you that it took a lot of trial and error for me to get this auth options right. I'm returning an ID here and I'm getting back a sub here. All these things I had to, it was confusing for me, and yeah, I'm getting the time, and getting the expiration time. I'm just using the current time in seconds, and I'm adding the max age, and I'm signing the token, and I'm returning that. The sign is going to come from JSON web token. Okay, fine. I'm signing it with this exact information, UID, image, and every other token props and expiry date. I'm passing the secret. The secret is coming from this encode, right? I'm not using any environment variable here, but that will be taken from here. Okay, and it has to be named in Next.auth secret. Okay, that's encoding the token. For decoding, again, I'm going to see if the token is there, or else I'm going to just throw an error. Inside a try catch, I'm going to use the verify from the JSON web token. Also, this is the algorithm we use. This is the algorithm we used while fabricating the JWT also. And I'm returning the token as a JWT. So if there is an error, I'm going to just return null. Okay, so that's the logic for generating the token and decoding and encoding the token. The last one, we have one thing remaining. We have callbacks. This sign-in method will be run when any of the sign-in is successful, both the credential sign-in and the Google sign-in. This method will be called. So I'm going to get the user and account. So why we are using this method is, if the provider is Google, we have to do the registration, right? Because we don't know if the user is logging in with the Google for the first time or not. So we are going to check that whether we need another query. So let's go back to the auth. We need one user. Okay, I'm going to create a one more schema here. User. As you can see, I'm very lazy. It would have been simpler to just type it, but that's the schema. Okay, form schema user, and I'm going to use it here. User just t dot it's not a public procedure, it's a private procedure. Dot input dot query. Here I'm going to use the Prisma dot user dot find unique. Okay, you can get the context and the input. The good thing is we have the UID in the context also, because we are inside the private procedure. But I'm going to actually use the UID from here. Okay. Fine. Now we have this query which is private. Oh. I'm a bit confused here. Okay, so I'm going to make it public procedure because it will be complicated that I need to actually cook a JWT here, right? So I make it a public procedure so that we can call it. Okay. So if there is Google, I'm restructuring the information from the user object. I'm checking for the existing user, and if there is no user, I'm going to do a registration. Okay, so now we have to go back and we have to create another mutation. Let's do it. In the schemas, I'm going to create a schema for third schema register with provider. Okay, I'm going to get the UID name, image, and type. The type is going to be Google, but still when we add more providers, we need this type to be received from the caller. We have the mutation ready now. I mean the ZARD schema ready. In the auth router, I'm going to create one more mutation. Register with provider, public procedure dot input is going to be ZARD schema register with the provider dot mutate, and context and input, and here I'm going to use the Prisma. First, let's destructure the information from the ZARD schema, and then I'm going to do mutation here. This mutation is a bit simpler compared to this one, because here we had to actually hash the password, create a UID, and you have to do two creations. One is in the credentials and one in the auth provider. But in the register with provider, we only have to do the auth provider. I'm just creating a user with UID name, image, and then I'm creating an auth provider row with a type. That's it. And I'm going to create a token and return back to the same format. This is the format we return back in the login in the other registration also. Fine. Now, if there is no existing user, I'm going to create that hit that mutation. Auth dot register with provider. What? Oh, that mutate, and we pass all this information. Type is going to be auth provider type. Oh, I did not install the DB. Okay, so I have to also install the DB here. I remember installing it. Fine. Dot, this is Google. Okay, UID is going to be ID, image is going to be image or an empty string, name is going to be name or empty string. I think that's all. So once the mutation is done, everything is done, I'm going to just return it true. So that's what the sign in is expecting. It expects a boolean. It expects a boolean. Okay, string or boolean, it expects something, so I'm returning true once it's successful. The last one is setting up the session. So we get the token, we get the session, we put the token information inside the session, and we return the session. And this is what will be used when we get the session from the front end. In the next application, we'll be using a use session from Next.js, and we'll get this information. Now it's TypeScript is not happy. It says that the UID is not part of the session. We go look at the type here. It only has name, email, and image, right? But I want UID in the session, in the front end also. I want the UID. I want to know the UID. So that's why I'm doing this. And the TypeScript is not happy. What I'm going to do, I'm going to create a type definition file. So next, auth d.ts. I'm importing the default session, which we just saw, and I'm modifying it. Okay, inside the whole Next.js, inside the session interface, the user is going to be a type, default session, and UID. Now the TypeScript will be happy. Okay, when you want to add more information, you have to come here, you have to add this here, add the properties there, and you can assign them. That's all about the auth options. And I'm also going to have a helper function called getAuth. So that's going to use get server session from Next.js, and I'm passing the auth options inside it. And this can be used Can I do it here? I cannot. Okay, so basically this is how we access the logged in, the authenticated users information in the server components. For the client components, we'll be using the use session from Next.js. That's the auth options. Now let's move on to create the API auth routes. So here I'm going to create a API auth, and this is going to be, we're going to collect a lot of routes here. Okay, you remember the redirect URL? It was something like API auth callback Google, like, right? Similarly, for sign out, we can call API auth sign out. So we are like collectively receiving a lot of routes here. I'm going to create a route.ts. I'm importing the Next.js. We have to install two things. One is the network library, which we just installed, which we just created. Foundation tRPC /network. And I'm also going to import the auth options, which we just created. Okay. I'm going to create a handler. I'm calling the Next.js with auth options in it. And I'm exporting the handler as get and post methods. Okay, that's what Next.js will be using for this. And I'm also going to create one more route called token /route.ts. Here I'm going to say get route. Let's import the next request and response. Basically, I'm going to use the cookie here, and I'm going to return the token from the cookie. So I'm getting the get cookies, and I can use that object, I mean whatever that is, to it's a read only request cookie object, and we can call the get inside it along with the name of the cookie I want. This is the exact name the next auth uses to save the session token. I'm getting the value from it, and I am returning in the JSON. So this route will be used in a client-based way where we cannot directly use the cookie. This is a route for the logged in user to get the token from the client side. So we created the auth options. We created these two routes. One that collects all the requests in the API/auth/store. Okay, that could be a get or post requests. Also, I created this token route. Fine. Okay. Now let's create the login page. Okay. I'm just going to rename this to, okay, let's call it sign in. I'm importing the form management hook. User form sign in. Okay. Again, this is again going to be a client component. And we don't have the name here. So, TypeScript is already helping me. It says that the form schema does not have name. And we don't have to do the mutation here. Instead, we don't need the tRPC client. We need Next.auth/React. We have a sign in function. Okay, that's what we want. Sign in and okay, it has a API credentials. I have to pass that, and then I have to pass the variables: email, password, and then also I'm going to specify the callback as root. So once the login is successful, Next.auth will automatically redirect us to the root. So we get the email and password from the submitted data. That's it. Now we have our login page ready. Let's try it. Okay. Let's run the applications. So in the application, cookies, we don't have any cookie right now. And also let's see the existing data so that we can log in using that credentials. We have, come on. Okay, I did not have the Docker running. Okay, I restarted the computer. Okay. Now let's restart the Prisma Studio. Now we'll have the data there. Okay, let's use this credential, user1@email.com. Also remember, we don't have any credentials right now. Let's use something wrong. Okay, so we got the error here. Okay, invalid email or password. We can manage that. Well, let's move on with the success way. our expectation is, so still it has started to store some data, but the session token is not there yet. But when I log in with the correct credentials, it goes back to the root as I mentioned in the callback URL. Also, we get the token here. Now we can see what's inside. It will be about the logged in user. Okay, this is the UID, name, email, and the expiry date is going to be 1 day, 24 hours. And we did not specify any image, right? So the login is successful. Let's also fix the registration. Last time the mutation is successful, but we have one more thing to do, which is actually we have one more thing, which is Google sign-in. We will finish it, and then we will fix that one small part in the registration page. Google, and on click, I'm going to use the same sign-in from the Next.auth. I'm going to specify Google as the first one. I think that's it. Let's have a sign out button in the page. Based on the, remember we created a get auth function that gives us, oh, this is a client component. Okay, so we have to do a little more thing. We have to actually create a provider. We have to actually wrap the application with the Next.auth provider. Oops. Session provider.tsx. So there I'm going to import the session provider as Next.auth session provider, and I'm going to just re-export it. Also, we want the so it just gets the children. The children is going to be in a React node. So I do this because we cannot directly use this session provider to wrap inside in our layout file, because it has to come from a client component. So go to the layout, and which provider needs to come first? This is the tRPC provider. Okay. Okay, now I just re-exported the session provider of the Next.auth from a separate component, and I wrapped the whole application with the session provider. And now in the page, I can get the session information using the use session from the Next.auth React. It's going to have data, status, and so on. I'm going to rename it as user data, and I'm going to have some conditions here. If user data.user is there, I'm going to have a button there. Sign out. On click, I'm going to call the sign out from the Next.auth React. Okay, that's it. Okay, also we have to have the, if it's logged in, I'm having the sign out. If it's not, I'm going to have a link to the sign in page. sign in page is going to be sign in. That's it. Okay. So I just we just get the data from the user session, and we are rendering a sign out button or a sign in link based on that. Now we can go to the root. We get the sign in button there. Sign out. On clicking it, this token will disappear. Okay. Now automatically the page refreshed and we get the sign in link. On clicking it, we go to the sign in page. Now I have enabled the Google sign in also. The sign in page. I have this Google sign in, right? Also, I have to make sure that I have the environment variable set up in the apps.web, which I have set up. Also, you have to make sure that all the redirect URIs origins are set up as well in the Google console, which we just saw. And clicking it, what? Redirect URI mismatch. Okay, that's okay. The problem is the client ID and the client secret of the Google are from a different project. Okay, so I'm going to fix that. Different Google project. So I'm just fixing it. Okay. Now let's restart the server and try it again. Google. Oops. Okay, actually, I have to set the type of the button here. For some reason, okay, it exists inside the form, which we don't want the Google button to be inside the form actually. I'm taking it out. Also, let's mark the button type as button. Let's try one more time. Now it's asking for the Google sign in. Okay, now so things should be working fine. I'm going to show this demo in one of my Google accounts. Okay, 1 minute. So in the callback URL, I'm going to make it a slash. I'm going to show you one of my browser profile. So I'm going to the sign in. Okay, we don't want to have this information. On clicking the Google, I already signed in with Google. Okay, so next time when you sign in with Google, it won't again ask you the permission from Google. So when I click it, it's signed in and it automatically redirected to the home page, and you will also see the cookie setup, and you will see the data inside the cookie. Okay, so it also has this image that's from the Google. This is the unique ID of the Google. That's it. Now we have the sign in ready, Google sign in ready. Let's do one more small thing in our registration page, and then we will be working with our UI library, and we will make everything look decent. To do that, basically once the registration is successful, okay, which is here, if user, I'm going to sign in so that the registration state will be synced in with the next auth. We registered with the same credentials, and again, if the mutation is successful, I'm calling the sign in from the React next auth React. I'm going to sign out, and I'm going to register a new user. Now I'm expecting, so if you look at the application, we don't have a token. Okay, this is different. We don't have the next auth session token. I'm going to register with a different user. Let's use user2 at email.com. Now it should go hit the database, I mean tRPC server, do the registration, come back with the success, and it signs in, it creates a token here, and it redirects to the home page. Okay, that's exactly what happened. Now we have the token here. You can have a look at the token. Jonas witnesses. Okay, UID, image, name, along with the expiry date. Fine. So in this section, we started setting up the next auth. We created a network library. We have next auth working in our next application, managing our token. And we also saw sign out, so on. So yeah, so the next section, we will be working on the UI, and we will make these things look okay. And then the next upcoming sessions, we will be creating items to be managed by individual users. So there we will explore one more type of authentication, which is row level authentication. Okay, we want only the user to manage their own items, right? Those kind of things are coming up. So see you in the next section. Hi, in this section, we're going to create our UI library. We're going to create a Vite project. We're going to set up Tailwind. We're going to use shadcn UI for that. Okay, so before that, I had this issue. I had this error. Basically, the web project failed here. It says that in the auth options, even though it exists inside the network library, the web project type checking fails because it does not know what this UID is about. So remember, we added this type definition. We have to add one in the web also. Here I'm going to import the network / next auth. Okay, so already this here we are doing some manipulation, like modifying the type of a third party library, and we don't have to copy paste it, but we just have to import the type definition. And let's try it. Now the web is actually happy. Let's try to commit the code. Okay, let's create our UI library. I'm going to go inside the libs. I'm going to create a new Vite project because it helps us to actually Vite allows us to create a publishable UI library. But we're not going to focus on that. Just we are going to have a placeholder to have our components. I'm going to select React as a framework, TypeScript plus SWC as the variant. Go inside the UI to npm install, and I'm going to set up shadcn. Okay, so we just did it. Let's install tailwind and post css and auto prefixer. I'm just following the documentation. And I'm initializing it, so it will create post css and tailwind config files. Okay, I'm going to skip this because I'm not going to use any paths. I'm going to skip this as well. And then I'm going to initialize shadcn UI. This will ask a few questions as well. TypeScript, yes. Default slate. This is going to be src/index.css because that's what we have here. CSS variables for colors, yes. Tailwind prefix, I'm going to leave it blank. It exists in the root. I'm going to actually select the components and utils with that, but we will be using with our own folder file location. That's it. Those are the options I selected. I'm going to delete the app.css and delete this. I'm not going to touch the Vite project at all. Now we have our Vite project ready. Let's also rename the package name foundation tRPC/UI. Okay, now I'm going to have a components directory, and I'm going to have atoms, molecules, organisms, templates. The templates are going to be pages, and organisms will be like parts of a page. Molecules will be parts of molecule, parts of atoms, and atoms will be smaller components like a button, an input element, or label element, so on. So I'm creating this for directories. We already have a component here, right? I'm going to just copy that to the molecule, and we also have to install Next.auth as a peer dependency. What? Fine. Now let's install our UI library in the web application, and we will actually replace this session provider with our session provider in the UI library. At foundation UI src components molecules session provider. Fine, our library is ready, and we have imported a component from the library. Now we have a few more things here. I'm going to convert this into template files, and also we will be creating a label input elements, And I want to keep the whole thing really simple. We saw really core fundamental demos, right? POC, proof of concepts, of a lot of TypeScript friendly workflows. So I want to keep this example really simple, focused to the core. But so yeah, so that we can extend further, and we don't have to delete a lot of things. So we have an input here. I'm going to just copy that, create a atom. Okay. So I'm going to copy this into a separate directory called util, and I'm going to delete this at directory at all. Now we have to re-import the cn. Now we have the input file, input component ready. Next we have a label. It needs some installations as well. Let's do it. React label, and I'm copying that, create a label.tsx, paste it, and you may want to relocate this, re-import that. Also, I'm going to do a small change here. Here, I'm going to extend the type to have the error. Also, I'm going to destructure. Any label will have the title. I'm destructuring the error, children, and title. What I'm going to do, I'm going to render the children separately. Okay, and also I'm going to render the error under the children and the title above the children. That's it. Oops, I have to actually put it outside. Fine. Now we have our two components. Let's also have a button. That's for the submit. For the button also, it asks me to install some React slot. Okay. These are primitive elements, right? Primitive things. I'm going to create the button. I'm going to take this button variant out of this component because that's reusable. Let's export it. That's it. Fine, we have our button ready. I'm going to have a loading state. So here I'm adding a new property, loading. I'm destructuring it, and we are going to check if the loading is true. If it's true, I'm just rendering a loader. That's from the Lucid React. Okay, it's just an icon, and I'm adding an animate spin so that icon will animate. Similarly, let's destructure the children also. Fine. So we have basic components here, but an input label. That's all. There are no. Okay, let's create a. Let's copy the contents of the file, the page, and let's create a template. This is for sign in. Okay. Fine. Now the UI element, I have to install the forms dependency. Maybe we can actually go back to the web application and remove that dependency, because the web application is going to be really thin and have only templates. We will try to achieve that. Okay, so this is the sign in template. Similarly, let's also copy paste the register. We have to install the tRPC client. Fine, now we can go back here. We don't want to do anything. We can simply return the URL, the template. Okay, register page. Fine. Okay, let's see if if that works. Fine. Now let's work on the sign in page. I'm going to have an auth layout. It's just some flex box. I'm going to create a component inside the organism. Auth layout.tsx. I'm going to create a type called base component. Base component equals children. It's going to be React node from React, and class name is a string. Okay, and both are optional. So I keep doing this, so I decided to, I keep wanting the children and class name in every component, so I just decided to have that. Right, so this is the layout. It's just a whole flex box, and I'm making it item center, item start, item start with some margin top. Okay, so item start, justify center, item start. I'm having some margin top in the child, and I'm making the child's width to medium. I'm having some border, rounded shadow, background, and inside that we have the title and the children. Now here I'm going to replace the div with the auth layout, and auth layout expects title. So the title is going to be sign in. Similarly, let's go to the register. Let's wrap the whole thing with auth layout. Register. What? Okay, the problem is we have now two tailwind configurations, and we are going to have the UI one. This is going to be the source of truth. Okay, we have our colors, everything inside the tailwind configuration inside the UI library. The web I'm going to clean up. Okay, we're not going to have any configuration inside the tailwind configuration of the web, but instead I'm going to have a preset. Okay, and also the content. The content is going to be targeting both the components in the local components of the web application, and also the components inside the libs. Okay, I'm going to restart, and now we have the style. Okay, so it still looks bad. Let's modify the components. Instead of this, I'm going to first import the label from the atoms. Here you can pass the title, email, and also you can pass the error. This is going to be errors which we get from the form state. errors.email.message. Okay, I'm also using the button from the atoms here. But yeah, the changes are here. I think the items have, okay, I did not replace the input element. Fine, now it should look okay. Also we have a button in white color. I'm going to keep it, okay. You can modify, and also I'm going to have some text here. Or maybe not. Let's just have some margin top. I think that works. Underline offset 4. We also have 8 now. Now we have the error. Okay, I'm going to do have some space below the error. maybe even more, so that the error will look closer to the element and not closer to the neighbor. Fine. This works, right? Also, we can have one more link register. Oops, not. Okay. So in the UI, I also have to add Next as a peer dependency. Fine. That's what we're going to go with. Similarly, I'm going to copy paste the same thing for the register. I just replace the default elements with the components we just created. This is the registration page, and we get the validation error also. And in the end, I'm going to link to sign in page. Okay, you can continue with Google, or you can sign in. Okay. So the UI looks okay, with the form validation working fine. Yeah, so that's about the UI library. We created some basic components, and we set up tailwind. Also, I wanted to show you how to set up the colors. So here we have the root color with the dark mode. Here is we have to set the colors using CSS variables, and you go here in the tailwind UI. Tailwind configuration is the UI, and you have to access this CSS variables, and you have to assign it inside the theme extend colors. So that's how you set your primary colors. You can have a huge palette starting with 50 to 950, 900, just like how Tailwind uses its color palette. I think it's okay now. Fine, yeah, so that's all about the UI library. See you in the next section. Bye. Hey everyone. So we are almost done. I did a small change in our authentication flow. So okay, in the authorization flow, so we had this function. Okay, so we used to have a user has required for a required role. It gets the UID, it gets the required role, and it uses a switch statement, and it returns something, right? So I changed it to get user roles. I think this is straightforward. It gets the UID. It creates this array of promises, and I'm resolving them all together in parallelly. Basically, it returns all the roles that the user has. Right now, we only have two things. When we have more like agent or something here, we can keep adding here, and we destructure the array, the resolved ones, and basically return back an array of roles. I think that was straightforward. That this is straightforward. So that's what I use in this function. So we get the user roles, and we are comparing the user roles to with the required roles. Okay, at least some of them has to be there in the required roles. So why I change this? I'm not going to use it. Use the user has required roles. I created this row level permission function. It gets an UID. It gets an array of required UIDs. For example, think about a company with multiple managers who can update the description of the company. One of the managers, right? So this function will get the requester from the context, and with requested I think that should be called required IDs. Okay, allowed IDs. Fine. Allowed IDs. This is optional, okay? Allowed IDs has to be there. So basically these two things should be there. We get the user roles, and we are actually checking with this is allowed roles. Okay, we are checking the user role with the allowed roles. If they have one of the roles, for example, admin can update description of any company, right? We can have another role here saying that a super admin. So people with that roles can update, can do anything. So we are just bypassing the whole request. If that person is an admin, we are allowing that person to go forward with the action. So if not, I'm converting the UIDs into an array of ID, because the allowed IDs could be a string or an array of string. I'm converting that into an array of string, and I'm comparing the UID to be inside the allowed UIDs. So that's it. This is the row level. This is a function for checking the row level permission. This allowed roles is updatable too. Okay, this is optional field, and we can pass any other roles as well, depending upon the requirement. So I'm not going to use this exact function in this anywhere, but in the future products, I will be using this boilerplate to create much more complex products, and we will see that there. Okay, right now I'm going to create, this is the product we have. I'm going to have some header, sidebar with a sheet component. That's what I'm going to do. I will be having a simple hero section, and that's the wrap. Okay, let's create the navbar. Okay, so I'm going to create an organism in the UI. So we need a container, a sidebar, and a brand. Okay, let's create the brand. I'm using it from and from another project called editor in chief. I don't want the fonts here. So everything is, they are simple components. Okay, so we saw the nav bar. It's just a nav. It's decay. It's top 0. I'm having full width, having a fixed height, having some border color, backdrop blur, and instead that I'm having a container. We will create that container. We use the brand, and now let's create the developer info. Okay, this is the developer info made with love by Karthik Raghavendran. What's happening? So I'm the brand, I'm getting the developer info. What's wrong? Okay. Foundation tRPC. That's the brand. Let's create a container. Container is a simple component with container and MX auto. I'm also having some padding X. That's it. So this is the, I don't want a separate type here. We have the base component, remember? Okay, that's the container. Okay, next comes the sidebar. It's a bit complicated. Okay. I'm going to create a hook here. So basically, when the sidebar is open, when I change the URL, I want the sidebar to close. That's what I'm doing here. I'm initially having a path name. I'm storing it to initial path name. And when the use path name changes, I am closing it and I am reassigning the new one to the initial path name. Okay. I had mod toggle, so I removed that. We don't have color toggle. Remember, I extracted the button variants to a separate file. And also the display user is there. Display user, okay, that's a different component. Okay, again, you remember this error, the UID. I'm going to copy paste the type definition, where we just imported the network into the UI library. The error should go away if we have the network library installed in the UI, which we don't have. So we have to install the network library in the UI. And our display user will be working. Okay, we just basically use the use session. We get the session object. Based on the status, we are not returning anything, and we get the image from the session object. We are displaying the name and the UID. So all these components we are looking at, they are all just, they are not complex, they are just layout components. We have some data here, right? And we are rendering them using some tailwind classes. Menu item. Okay. Now we need to install the sheets. Let's install the sheet from the shadcn. I'm first doing this, installing the shadcn, add sheet, and then I'm copying. Okay, basically it will create the sheet component here. I can just drag it into the atoms. Oh. Fine. We have the sheet. Okay. Now we have the sidebar, which basically we get some properties in this structure. Label, href, and logged in is a boolean. Okay. And if there is no user in the sidebar, I'm just going to return as sign in. If there is a user, I'm going to return a sheet with a trigger, which is going to be a menu icon, an icon from the Lucid React. And then we have the sheet content with a header is going to be a display user, which we are going to display some image, the profile picture, or if there is no profile picture, we are going to just use the initial of the name. And we are going to return the install the we're going to enter the name and UID. It's not going away. I just types .t dot. Okay, so I have this installed. Oh. Sometimes that is not sufficient. Sometimes I had to actually include the type definition file in the tsconfig So we have this include. I'm going to try to include type study.ts. Now the TypeScript is happy. Okay. So I'm going to proceed. Fine. I think we are good. We have a nav bar now. We have the brand with the brand name and with the developer info made with love by Karthik Raghavendran. And I have the sidebar. And these children are going to be like placed with the justify between. The brand is going to be in the left corner and the sidebar is going to be the right corner. If there is not signed in, I'm just going to return a link. So we'll be having a link called sign in the right corner of the navbar. If the user is signed in, we will be having this sheet trigger, which is just a button with a menu icon, the hamburger icon actually. Okay. Now I'm going to go to the layout. Here I'm going to first use a container here. And then let's also get the navbar. And I'm going to just place it here. Okay, we have the navbar. See, there's also some hover animation, hover effects. Oh, there's something wrong with the background color, as you can see. Sheet. Oh, BG black. Okay, maybe this is the problem. Okay, that's the overlay. So I'm just going to give a BG white for the sidebar. There could be better ways to do it. By default, shadcn tries to do this dark mode toggling. They deal colors in terms of foreground, background. Okay. But I'm just going to go with a BG white, and this thing works for now. And I'm seeing some unwanted pages. Let's call it another page. Okay, that's the another page. Let's also create a dummy page in our web application. Another page. Hey, this is another page. Okay, now when I click it, reporter, oh, I have to change the menu here. The URL here, another page. Go here, click another page, we go to the another page, and also you saw the sidebar slide back, right? Fine. And also I'm clicking the brand, we go back to the nav bar, and we have a sign out here. I'm clicking it, we can sign out, and we get the sign in. If the user is not logged in, the person gets the sign in. Okay. Oh, that's a spelling mistake. It has to be capital I. Okay. Now when I click it, we go back, we go to the sign in page. Also we can go to the register page, and you can go to the home page. Next, let's just create a simple home page for the, to just explain what technologies we use and what is the advantage of using this boilerplate, and that's it. That would be the end. Okay, so let's see in the next section. Bye. So we have our home page component pending, and I'm going to keep this boilerplate really light. Actually, we'll be working on top of this boilerplate. We are going to create more full stack projects. Like I'm working on a product called AI Academy, where students can learn online. Admins can create courses with subjects with chapters, and students can learn, students can ask doubts, and students can take exams, and AI will correct the answer sheet. Okay. There are lots of other cool projects I'm working on. So I'm basically going to build those things on top of this boilerplate. So this is really light, but still I think we have covered a lot of core concepts really well without compromising much. So I'm going to end this boilerplate by modifying this home page. I'm going to create a home page template. This is going to be just some text I generated. It's like readme. I'm going to have a header, going to have the link in the top, link to the GitHub page. I'm having some structure. Let's use this in the page instead of this. I'm going to use the home page. Okay, so this is the home page. I'm having a header. I'm just listing the structure of the application with apps and libs. What are the libraries we have, what are the applications we have, what are the key features. The first one is the TypeScript. We enforce strong typing from the beginning to the end. Okay, starting with the Prisma, ending with the UI components. Everything is typed, nothing, we do not compromise on anything. And also we have a really strong static testing. We have the validate script along with the pre-commit hook and so on. The type propagation, which we discussed here. Modern tooling, yeah, Prisma, tRPC, Next.js, everything is all the concepts we use are really hot and trending. Also, yeah, reusable components using the shadcn, UI, and tailwind. Okay, so that's the boilerplate combining tRPC. We have to clean up. Okay, yeah, so that's the boilerplate combining Next.js Express with tRPC. And also I believe I went extra mile in creating tRPC clients for both the client side and the server React components. And the React server is also well structured. We saw authentication, authorization, role-based authorization, row-level authentication. We did not check that, but we have the function there for checking the row-level authentication, right? Also, we use shadcn with tailwind. We have really good form management using Zord, React Hook Form. We have Prisma Setup, and we are exporting the types and Prisma client. Yeah, overall, I'm really happy with the video. I hope you enjoyed. Okay, see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.